This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/TrekFM. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode or any other, please join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
I'm J.G. Hertzler. I played Kolos on Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, and right now I'm on Warp 5.
How we doing, Trip?
Ready when you are.
Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, Boomers, to another episode of Warp 5. I'm your host, Brandon-Shea Mutala, for this bonus episode, this extra episode with more content from the Northeast TrekCon in Albany, New York, from the weekend of October 26th, 2018. In this little interview that I'm going to present for you, I talk with Leslie Hoffman, who was a stunt woman on Star Trek. If you want to check out some of her work and check out her webpage, we talk about it at the end of the episode, but it's Stuntrek.com, but it's spelled Stuntrek.com. So you could check it out. She talks a lot in this interview about how she became involved with stunt work and what it's like to work in the business, and, you know, talking about coordinating stunts and some of the dangerous stunts that she's done. And she talks about a couple of episodes of Star Trek where she did some pretty interesting stunt work. This was a really, really fascinating interview, as I've never really spoken to anybody about this kind of behind-the-scenes production for any of the Star Trek shows or anything, really. So this was a real joy to talk with Leslie, and I really hope you enjoy this interview from the Northeast TrekCon in Albany, New York. And take a listen. We're here at the Northeast TrekCon, and I'm with Leslie Hoffman, who was a stunt woman on Star Trek. And we're going to ask her a few questions about what it's like to be a stunt woman. So, you know, because we've got all our stars that we have on our shows that we love to watch, but we don't want to watch them get hurt. So they always hire a stunt woman or a stunt man to do all the really hard work, right?
That's correct. Yes, so we're here to make the actors and actresses look good. We're not here to outshine them.
Not here to outshine them. Excellent. Right on. So stunt work is an interesting work because it can be very dangerous, but you guys do your best to keep it as safe as possible. But how did something like this intrigue you? How did you get started in something like this?
Well, I had a gymnastic background. Most stunt people, they either came from rodeo families, or they did motocross, or like I say, or gymnasts, or so. You know, in a strange sort of way, we've been training since we were little kids.
Yeah.
But when I was very young, I thought I wanted to be an actress, and every year when the teacher would make you write, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I would always say, "I want to be an actress." But in 1972, my older brother was out at Caltech in California, and we went to the Universal Studios, and there was the Western Stunt Show. Mm-hmm. And here these guys come out, and they're talking, but then they're throwing the punches and falling, and I go, that's it. That's what I want to be. So even though I have acting training, American Academy of Dramatic Arts in the Herbert Berghoff Studio, because of my gymnastic training, mm-hmm. I was able to combine it all together, and I went out to California to become a stunt woman.
Okay, excellent. So when you apply to be a stunt person, do you just go in with a resume to a studio, or what does it take to get into this type of work?
Well, actors and stunt people are part of the Screen Actors Guild, which recently merged in the last several years. Now it's called SAG-AFTRA, which was the other entertainment union, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. Anyways, back to what you asked. In order to get a job, you must belong to the union.
Okay.
In order to belong to the union, you have to get a job. So try breaking that circle.
It's like a young kid trying to get credit.
It's extremely hard to get into the union.
Okay.
And I got my first job on 2 Minute Warning, which was one of those football movies. The same year they did Black Sunday.
Okay. Yeah,
so
yeah.
They're really the same movie
Okay,
in my
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
But that's how they needed. Because people were running down the hallway, they couldn't have the same people running down every single hallway in the Coliseum. And the stunt coordinator said, if you can get, the producer to write you the letter, I'll hire you.
Okay.
And the producer wrote the letter, and that's how I got into the union.
Okay.
But let's put it this way: there's 10,000 actors applying for a job, but there's still 500 stunt people applying for the same job.
Yeah.
It's a very hard, both industries, acting and stunts. It's hard to make a living at it.
Okay. So you're saying the first movie you did, this was a football movie, and being hired were you hired as an extra or as a stunt person for this running down the hall? Like, is that something they consider a stunt then?
I was hired as a stunt woman.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Now, do you remember the first, really dangerous stunt you had to perform, and how did you feel doing that?
Well, that's interesting because it's so hard to define what is dangerous. Mm-hmm. Like, just because we were talking about 2 minute warning,
mm-hmm.
They had, there's your actors, you're the stunt people, which are same category. Then you have your extras, and they only have to hire 50 extras before they can hire what's called waivers, where they're paying these people $18 a day.
Mm-hmm.
And there were like 700 waivers.
Mm-hmm.
So when they yelled action and 700 plus people go running down a hallway, and after they finish that shot, there's shoes and glasses, and I mean, that's pretty dangerous. You can get trampled by a human being.
Okay,
but in reality, to what you're talking about, probably the two most dangerous stunts I've done was was Love Boat, where I did a 78-foot fall into water.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and there was a stuntman jumping in after me, and we landed about 3 feet apart. Now, two things. You hit water wrong, it's like hitting cement.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to enter the water correctly, or I say it's like hitting cement.
Yeah.
Anyways, the other thing was the stuntman landed about 3 feet away from me. Had he landed on top of me,
that would have been painful.
That could have been the end of it right then and
yeah.
there, too. The other stunt was in the movie 1941, Steven Spielberg's movie, was the jump into the back of the egg truck. I was doubling Wendy Jo Sperber. We go up this ramp on this. Well, the sidecar was motorized. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how come it was still moving. It was a motorcycle sidecar. The guy pulled the pin, the motorcycle goes one way, the sidecar goes the other way. Like I say, they put a motor in the sidecar, except that every time we went up this loading dock ramp, we'd run out of gas before we would hit the ramp that would launch us into the air. And we couldn't figure out what was wrong. I mean, late at night, can't figure out what's wrong. Anyways, this, like the fourth time or fifth time, the stuntman decided that we were going and we were going to take the jump. And I'm just sitting on the front of the sidecar, and we went up the ramp, ramp to do the jump, ran out of gas, and the sidecar hit the back of the truck, stake bed truck. The sidecar flips over. Ooh. They had pads on the ground for that stunt, man. There were no pads for me. I just slid onto the truck. Had we hit any lower on that truck, I would have been decapitated.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I would say those are the two most dangerous stunts I've done. But you know, sometimes it's the easiest stunt that can get you.
Yeah.
Because you don't think, you know, what could go wrong with a fall or something until you hit a rock or you know, you have breakaway windows. Well, I'm sorry. Even candy glass is sharp. I mean, you land on it, it's going to cut you.
One of the most famous stunts that I know of from watching behind-the-scenes footage and everything like that is from the Road Warrior, when that guy's riding the motorcycle and he hits a thing, and the stunt was to just shoot him off, and he's supposed to just fly off with the momentum, but it hit wrong, and they got it on film and they kept it in the movie, right? But he's tumbling like head over heels, like out of the shot, right? And I can't remember what happened, but the guy definitely got very injured from that stunt.
There was also, I don't remember if it was one of those movies, but this is Australian stunt people.
Yeah.
There was an Australian stunt woman that the camera boom or something didn't go up, and she lost an arm. She had a traumatic brain injury. I mean, I don't know. Those Road Warrior pictures are pretty dangerous.
Yes.
And that's it. There's a difference between a daredevil and a stunt person. A stunt person should be able to do a stunt over and over again until the director gets what he wants for camera. A daredevil, he just goes for it. If he breaks every bone in his body and he's in the hospital for 18 months or something like that, then that's what a daredevil is.
Yeah.
I mean, I have turned down jobs that I felt were unsafe to me. I mean, I don't ride a motorcycle. I was called up to slide a motorcycle underneath a truck. I said, thank you very much. Here's the name of a stunt woman that does do motorcycle stunts, but I appreciate the call, but no way.
Okay, excellent. So tell us about some of the stunts that you did for Star Trek then.
I was Vedic Yatsam on Rocks and Shoals, and I jumped off the second story of the promenade and technically was hung.
So how do they do that? Because that's a very powerful scene when that happens, right? When the Vedic jumps off the edge and she's killing herself as a protest against the Cardassians and the Dominion coming back to the station. So, because when you look at it on TV, it looks like the person hangs themselves. So when it's all done with editing, I'm sure, right? So it cuts and edits.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, the safety of the hanging was there was a noose around my neck, but it was not connected to the rope that was around the railing of the second story. I mean, it was taped to my back.
Okay.
But it was not connected to the rope that was around my neck. Okay. So I mean, if anything, well, you wouldn't see it on camera, but and there was a porta pit with cardboard boxes on it that my legs would go into the cardboard boxes, so I wouldn't, hit myself underneath my chin with my knees. So there was no risk of accidentally hanging myself.
Yep.
I mean, there was, like I say, there was the porta pit down below. There was the way I described the rope. The funniest thing about that stunt is I had to do it maybe 2 or 3 times because they did it with a high-speed camera, which slows it down, and you can hear a high-speed camera. So they're saying, "Okay, camera," and you'd hear this, right, Okay, action. And like I say, so camera, action, and I step off the promenade, and I hear.
Oh, ran out of film.
The camera jammed.
Jammed.
It isn't like cartoons. It isn't like you can step off the balcony, hear the camera stop, and step back on the balcony. I was on my way down. That was the end of that. I mean, so they had to they cleaned or whatever, unjammed the camera, and we had to do it again. And,
oh, man.
And then, well, specifically, you're talking about that scene or that whole. What they did was they had her feet come into camera and the hat that hits the floor, and actually that hat weighed about 10 pounds. They say, "Well, you can have problem. Is that hat going to fall off?" I said, "Not a problem." The minute I hit the end of it was like this trapeze I was holding on to. So.
Yeah.
So we did the jump. Now they want to do the feet coming into camera. And I'm holding on to sort of like a trapeze thing. And on action, I do that. I mean, I can't let go of it because then I'd fall into the picture. They just want the feet.
Yeah.
So I do this, and I'm thinking the jerking of coming to the end of, my arm length would make the cap fall off.
Nope.
That thing just... It went harder on my head. So they had to have a crewman hold the hat, and as I did this, he'd let go of the hat, so the hat would hit the ground.
Awesome, that's funny.
Yeah, no, they're, well, like I say, I'll tell my favorite story, and I was just safetying the airbag, is right, like probably the first season of Voyager. Mm-hmm. There was a bad guy. I think his name was Jonas.
Jonas, yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
good.
I think so, yeah.
Got the right name. And he's fighting Neelix.
Okay.
And Jonas falls into a vortex, which the vortex is added as special effects afterwards.
Yeah.
So in other words, the stuntman had to do a high fall for Jonas. But right now, they have the scaffolding, and they have the two actors up there struggling. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a fight. I mean, it was more like a grab and struggle. And it's very late at night.
Yeah.
And I'm on the stage, and I'm one of the spotters around the airbag. I mean, hopefully the actor isn't going to fall off. Mm-hmm. And they're in this tight grip, and all of a sudden you hear this. Sorry, I didn't mean to get you wet, but I mean, it echoed throughout the soundstage. I didn't know Talaxians had that kind of defense. He gasped Jonah.
That's hilarious.
I had to leave the soundstage. I couldn't handle it.
That's hilarious. Excellent. Right on. Now, when you do stunt work, they put you in full makeup when you're doing the Star Trek characters that you're replacing, because when they shoot from far away, so they can't quite see that it's not you, but they've got to make it look as close as possible to the original characters. It
took 3 hours to get into the Mila makeup.
Yeah.
And
this is Cardassian, so he's holding up the picture. Yeah.
I would say, unless you're really, really good, you couldn't tell the difference of this makeup to the actress that actually played Mila.
Yeah.
And there's my costume, and it even has the tag that says Leslie Hoffman.
Nice.
I mean, they would make me the exact costume. It wasn't like that actress, get out of this costume so Leslie can put it on. I mean, there were two sets of costumes.
You had your own, yeah.
And in some cases even more than that, because if it got wet, if the scene required water or something like that, and it gets wet or something, they got to be able to quickly put you into another costume and get that scene. I mean, the famous "we're losing the light," like if we're on location. I mean, they gotta get so many pages filmed in a day. Someone asked me this before, is that, I forget how they asked me, is like doing movies different from doing television? And technically it is. I mean, television, you have about 8 or 9 days that you have to film an episode in. And you have to have it done because it has to go on the air. Movies, you know, they can take their sweet... They don't want to go over budget, but they can take their sweet time filming a movie. But television, you got to get it done.
Yeah, there's always a time crunch because they're pretty quick. You know, back in those days when they're doing 26 episodes a season, you know, so they got to get it in and out as quick as they possibly can. And 8 or 9 days was a turnaround on a show. So and even then, they would put the episode together and they'd say, "Oh, we don't have a close up of Avery, you know, doing whatever, or we don't have, you know, we're missing the, you know, the connection between from this scene to this scene." So it was called second unit. That's correct. Yeah.
So Dennis Matalone, who's the stunt coordinator of TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, the shows actually, as one was ending, it overlapped into the next show.
That's correct. Yeah.
And Dennis might have a stunt on Deep Space Nine, a stunt on Voyager, a second unit on Deep Space Nine, a second unit on Voyager, plus a production meeting. So I actually was the only female that he had as an assistant stunt coordinator, which I'm very proud of. But I mean, he had about four other people that he trusted to be assistant stunt coordinators, and depending on what was going on, either I'd be coordinating on a soundstage or I'd be attending a production meeting. You know, he would decide who needed to be where, and like I say, not only was I doing production meetings, I was doing stunt coordinating on the set.
So for stunt coordinating, does that mean you'd go to the meetings, they'd say, we're going to film this scene today, this is the kind of stunt we need, and then would it be your responsibility to work with another stunt person and have that stunt performed?
You kind of mix two things. Production meetings are done before an episode is even filmed.
Okay.
You get what's called a call sheet, which tells you what scenes are being filmed that day. So when you have the call sheet and you have to go to the set, you know, okay, this is the day that this stunt is happening. And yes, you set up the stunt, or and being a stunt coordinator isn't even it isn't just taking care of stunt people or actors. I was doing the episode of Bada Bing Bada Bang, and there was a special effects guy on the when Avery threw the money up in the air.
Yeah.
If he had thrown it up in the air, it would have come down in a wad, which isn't what they wanted it floating all over the place.
Yeah.
So this special effects guy was on an A-frame ladder with actually one of those pizza, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And he had the money on that, and he's just trying to shake it like that so the money would kind of float off in different directions. Well, we're in between scenes, and they're moving what's called a camera crane, which sticks when it's down, it sticks way out. So here's this guy at the top of an A-frame ladder. They're moving the crane. The crane hits the ladder, or it start. Well, they weren't going fast. They were just rolling it, but they rolled it into the A-frame ladder. I was in the episode, so I'm dressed up in a 1950s dress with high heels, but I am the stunt coordinator. And like I say, you have to look around, and I just see this thing going into the ladder. The ladder is slowly tipping over. you see the guy with the pizza thing in one hand and him holding onto the ladder. You know, he knows he's going over.
Oh boy!
And nobody saw it. Nobody saw what was happening, and I just ran up to that ladder and just leaned my weight. You know, grabbed both sides of the ladder and leaned my weight into it, and just pushed it as hard as I could against the crane. And luckily, other people saw what was happening, and they pulled the crane back, and they also helped me straighten. Guy never hit the floor.
Oh, that's
never
good.
went off the ladder.
That's good. Because he probably wouldn't have been set up with like a rope or a rig or anything nothing like that.
He was just up the ladder. I mean, again, that's what I'm saying is that, hey, I'll just walk up this ladder. I'll just shake this pizza spatula or whatever you want to call it. I mean, who needs pads around the ladder?
Yeah.
Who needs to be harnessed or being hooked into the ladder would have even been that would have been worse.
Yeah,
because he would have had a better chance of jumping off the ladder, hitting and rolling, than to be locked into the ladder. But it was really funny. His name was RJ, and the next day I was walking around the Paramount lot with actually one of the other assistant stunt coordinators, or my friend Tom, and Gary Monak, which is who RJ worked underneath, special effects. They're in a golf cart, and they're coming. Tom and I are walking down the road, and they're coming by in the golf cart, and RJ says to Gary Monak, "She's my hero."
Excellent. Right on. That's awesome. Well, it sounds like a really fascinating and fun job, you know. Is it something you're still involved with? Are you still working in the film industry, working on films?
I retired out in about 2002.
Okay.
I mean, and I wish more stunt people would do this, is that, you know, it's like football players. I mean, you got so many good years, and then it starts really, I mean, it's continuous trauma. I mean, you've never been taken off the field in an ambulance or anything like that, but you've hit the ground enough times that your knees are going out, or your back is bad, or, you know, and it's time to quit. Or just like, in fact, talking about the ladder, I would say that I still had that edge, that I could look around and I saw what was happening and I was able to stop it.
Yeah.
I think when you start losing your edge, then you become not only a danger to yourself, you become a danger to both cast and crew.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, right on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Can you let the listeners know where they can find you? Do you have social media presence that they can follow you on Twitter or anything like that?
You can find me on Facebook. I do have. I pronounce it Stuntrek, but I only have 2 T's in it. STUNTREK.com. Except somebody pointed out to me that, well, does this say Stun Trek or does it say Stunt Wreck? I go, no.
Definitely not Stunt Wreck.
It's not the Stunt Wreck. It's Stunt Trek, like Star Trek.
Yes, excellent. Excellent. And, excellent. So that's your website then, Stunt Trek?
Stunt Trek.
That's the website? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Right on. Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it. It's been very fascinating to listen and hear how you do stunt work and you know, how it incorporates into Star Trek, and it's been a real blast. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.